Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning into another Supatease video. And in this one, we are going to be covering, is it or is it not worth coming back to retail World of Warcraft for PvP right at this moment in time in the War Within Season 1. I'm going to be looking at some community responses, community issues, as well as giving my own personal experiences and opinion on the subject. And if you want to make sure that you're staying up to date with news related to World of Warcraft, then make sure to smash that subscribe button. So as I was scanning through the community looking for feedback from players, I stumbled around this post, which was posted a day ago from a player who has played for their first season ever in rated PvP, and they have managed to hit 2,000 rating in 2 weeks on Feral, and they've left some notes on what their climb and what their experience was like. So in the opening statement, I've been a sweating cutting edge PvE player for 7 years. So interesting, coming over from PvE. And I feel like I've actually seen this a lot, especially on Twitter, is Mythic Plus players coming and actually trying PvP. And I think it's kind of an inevitability if you're focused on any content in the game that you're going to burn out on it at some point, or you're not going to really like it anymore at some point. And the fact that there are other modes of content to try are great. This happened in Dragonflight where PvPers started not having a great time. They tried Mythic Plus for a few months and had a blast with that. So I think that is something that Blizzard does need to focus on, is making it easier to transition from a PvP focused player to a PvE focused player, because inevitably both of them are going to get tired of the gameplay loops that are involved with them after you've played it for months in a row, and you're going to want to try other content. So I do think that is something that they could likely look to improve, which I do believe they are in the next patch, which is 11.1. They're adding in some items that allow you to apply to PvE gear that increases your PvE gear up to a PvP item level, but still, unfortunately, a lot of PvE gear just doesn't have versatility, so it makes it a very kind of tough transition, although this player seemed to have not too bad of a time, even despite that. But they decided to try rated PvP for the first time this season. I have some extra time and really wanted the Mogs, what I learned and saw along the way. So you can see rewards are also a huge incentive. When there's a really cool looking transmog or a really cool looking mount, a lot more players are going for it. That may also be why we see less participation in 3v3, is that players are not as interested in the Gladiator Bat as they were the rad dragons that we got from Dragonflight. Although I think 3v3 Arena has actually been picking up. If you can manage to get 3v3 queues outside of Solo Shuffle, you're getting pretty much instant queues up to even the highest levels of the ladder for the most part. So if you're struggling with queue times, making sure that you can make some friends that log on regularly at certain times of the day can guarantee that you're just getting queues, you're getting games really fast. Whereas Solo Shuffle, you are kind of at the whims of whether or not there are any healers queuing currently. But the first couple of points here, first off, the fact I can solo queue for all of this stuff is actually a godsend, which was a massive improvement from Dragonflight. Even if it does have a queue time, if you're somebody who can't find any friends or can't find anybody or just doesn't want to do that, the fact that you can just press the queue button and you can do other stuff while you're in the queue, and then come back and then take the game without having to constantly message and make sure that it's the right comp and it's the right players and it's the right time frames, it's the right skill level. There's a lot of managerial stuff that goes into building your own group, which is the downside of it. But once you get some regular friends, it can be really good just being able to log on and be able to play. But the fact that solo queue even exists is a really good thing. I know inflation is a problem or whatever, but I calibrated at 1700 in both modes, and the 1800 transmog was a big motivator to play. It gave me enough time to really get into PvP, and I climbed to 2k, farmed the Vicious mount as an extra motivator. It's interesting that it kind of stops after 2k rating. I think that this is usually where the next big gap ends up being. I think there's a tabard, might be some weapon transmogs. They did try and displace the rewards amongst lower thresholds instead of just all of the elite weapons at one cutoff. I think they've displaced a lot of them to lower rating thresholds. But adding obviously a recolored gladiator mount to Shuffle and Battleground Blitz, I think would go an incredibly long way as far as incentivizing participation, because you can see it's such a huge thing. But most of the players, when you look at the data, end up dropping off in participation at around 1800, because 1800 is like the main kind of, I feel like I can actually get this and it's a significant reward. And then you look and it's like, yeah, that other stuff seems like it's too far away, it's too hard, I don't want to try. So they've tried pulling the rewards down, but obviously they're not incentivizing enough. So I would really like to see recolored gladiator mounts for Solo Shuffle and Battleground Blitz, not just the legend title and the strategist title. But even with inflation, I can tell you right now, so if you want to know if it's worth playing right now, the ladder is inflating. It's getting easier to get rating, which is probably also why he was able to get to 2,000 rating a lot easier than you probably experienced if you ended up quitting the game before watching this video. Is that rating is inflating. It is getting easier to climb in all brackets. Now for BGB, so he did some Battleground Blitz. Battleground Blitz games are often super lopsided. What's up with the giant CR and MMR disparity within some teams? I don't know why this system, unless they're experimenting to see if it leads to higher participation, which is maybe something that's good for them to do, is experiment and see. And then if it worked out, then they could apply it to Arena. But it's massively different how the rating system works between Solo Shuffle, 3v3, and BGB. BGB just feels like put time in, you will climb, and you'll get like probably 2,400 pretty easily. I think you start struggling to really see current rating gains above 2,400 or maybe even higher than that. Other than that, it's just like a time sink. Your MMR can go wildly up fast, but you only ever gain like 10 to 20 actual rating a win. And it's kind of more just like almost a battle pass system where you're eventually going to climb because your MMR gets so wildly out of control from where your current rating is that you never lose rating, and you just kind of keep going up steadily. And I don't know if they did that because that's kind of how PvEers progress, and they anticipated that a lot of PvEers would be trying BGB. I mean, he is a PvEer, so they wanted the system of rewards to feel similar to that, or if this is just the system that happened to be how it is, and this isn't really what they wanted, and if they're going to go back on it. But I think consistency is important, so hopefully next season there will be consistency between them. I didn't know what the purple crystal did until my last few games. The purple crystal. Is he talking about Deep Hall Ravine in the middle? You pick up the crystal and you bring it back to the base. It gives you bloodlust and you get points. I still have literally no idea how to play Eye of the Storm or the Pandaria base capping map, and I YOLO'd it. Eye of the Storm is just control a base, fight for the flag, hold the flag, and wait till you cap. Eye of the Storm is probably one of the more boring ones, I think, for BGB. And the Pandaria one, Deep Wind Gorge, you kind of just run around solo. As a Feral Druid, you're probably just going offensively and trying to solo enemy bases and trying to take them out by yourself. So like YOLOing it is probably fine as a Feral Druid. Finally understand why people have been complaining about Mistweavers and Outlaw. Bro, Outlaw Rogue being able to just immediately snatch cap a base is so broken in Battleground Blitz, and they're actually addressing this in 11.1. They're increasing the time it takes for the flag to actually become available, so Outlaw Rogues can't just and instantly get into the base and take it before any other class even has a chance. And then obviously Mistweaver mobility and portal usage carrying the flag has been kind of just constantly out of control. I'd really like for them to come with a PvP talent, likely for a spec that doesn't do really well in BG Blitz, that gives them the ability, like, it's kind of like a time bomb. You put the debuff on the Mistweaver, and then after a certain period of time, you can teleport to the Mistweaver's location, no matter where they are. So if they're outside of the base in Warsong, you put this on the target, and then so you're trying to time it when you think they're going to port, and then they see the debuff, and they got to think, if I port now, he's going to teleport with me. I got to stay here for a little bit longer before I port. Some type of interaction that allows the class that likely has maybe an enhancement shaman or something that has generally less mobility, in order to have some sort of counterplay to it, because it just feels like there's not really a lot. Disc Priest flag carriers felt kind of unkillable. There's a big balance issue, I think, between Battleground Blitz and Arena. The fact that we have Solo Shuffle, which is a different dampening pace, which makes it completely different PvP gameplay, than 3v3, which is a different dampening gameplay pace, to BGB that has no dampening. So healers are incredibly strong in Battleground Blitz because there's no healing reduction debuff. But so then if you nerf healers, then it makes Arena way too fast paced, because there are. So if you're going to nerf it, then you have to kind of dial back the dampening in Solo Shuffle and Arena at the same time. It's a very kind of intricate problem. And I feel like this is like the next major step that they're going to have to take with WoW in general, is adding more specific tuning knobs. Because I think a lot of the disgruntlement for Mythic Plus is just that they don't have a lot of tuning knobs for dungeons only. They tune for the raid, and then whatever's left for the dungeons is left, and they do like a couple of little tweaks to major big AoE spells or something for Mythic Plus, but it's not enough. And then you end up with that top heavy, only one comp is ran type of deal. And the same thing happens here, where certain mechanics are really strong in BGs, but then totally useless in Arena, and then they nerf Mistweavers because it's too strong in BGs, but then they're even worse in Arena. And you end up in a really bad spot if you don't have enough knobs for it. Love how chaotic planning is. Some games people will just assign us to go somewhere and we get stomped. Other games no one says a thing and we somehow win. BGB have broken it down like this in the past. It's what numbers did I decide on this again? Basically 30% of your games you're going to win, and it doesn't matter what you do. You're just going to get carried in 30% of your games. You could be AFK, terrible, useless, do nothing, be dead the whole time, backpedaling. You're going to win 30% of your games. You're also going to lose 30% of your games no matter what you do, how good you are. You could play insane, have the best game of your life, top damage, best CC, you're doing everything right, in the right spot the whole time. You will lose 30% of the time. And then it's probably like 40% of the time you're going to get a game where you had some impact on the outcome of the game and it actually really mattered. Your impact was important towards the outcome of the game, and you can actually decide whether the game goes in your favor or not. And I think if you talk to anybody in BGB, that's why it feels a bit kind of just like random as to who wins. That's because 60% of the time you're either winning or losing entirely out of your control. And then 40% of the time you're actually getting like a really solid gameplay experience. And that's just because of the randomness of player skill disparity, composition disparity that comes into play with this mode. Now for solo shuffle, I think Cyclone single-handedly carried me to like 1900. I just spammed it on targets we weren't attacking, and it always helped. This was not true though after I hit 1900, and he gets kicked all of the time as a melee DPS, and it feels a bit silly. See, as soon as you get to the bracket where people figure out that they've got interrupts and ways to stop you from casting, it's not so fun to try and cast anymore. Also, I sincerely apologize for accidentally cycloning low health targets that my teammates wanted to kill. I've seen a lot of people say that Cyclone is really OP, because it doesn't break like sheep. There's some times where you'd really like it to break like a sheep, and it doesn't, though. Don't care if rogues and mage are balanced. They make PvP boring sometimes. Interesting. So even at PvE who's tried PvP for the first time hates rogue mage. It's just like a natural occurrence. Warriors kept killing me. Then I learned to root them near pillars, and they fell for it every single time. I kept killing all of the totems I could find, except Stone Bulwark and Earthen Wall. And I don't know if this is a huge waste of time. It depends on if it's a Resto Shaman or not. Killing a Resto Shaman's Healing Stream and Healing Tide totem are likely really high priority. I think killing Stagfield totems, obviously, so you can move and not get pulled back. And then I'm forgetting the name of the totem that gives you crit. It's got 5 HP. It's a red kind of electric fire totem that comes down on the ground. Killing that is important because it gives them a lot of damage modifiers. But I don't think you should be killing like Ellie Shaman Healing Stream totem. It's probably not worth it. Sub-rogues are spooky when they show up. Hey! Sub-rogues, when they know what they're doing, are really strong right now. They're really good. Definitely sleeper. I think all 3 rogue specs right now have a lot of potential. 150 rounds later, I still don't know why my team prefers to open on certain targets over others. Hey, I'll have linked at the end of this video the target priority tier list that I made so you guys can know what the best targets are in PvP. I always felt like ignoring BM hunters or opening on frost mages was a waste of time. These are generally hard classes for melee DPS, although as a feral druid you shouldn't probably feel as bad opening on these classes. But they do have a lot of ways to stop melee, which can be difficult. I installed Gladius X, and my brain still doesn't actually look at its frames. Plater saved me instead. I'm the same way. People tell me that all the time on my stream, like, why don't you download Battleground enemies? Because I just look at the health bars above their heads and where they're moving on the map. I think having a tracker to see their trinket and their DRs would be nice for me, but I don't want to just stare at the health bars in PvP. So anyways, gonna end on a high and looking forward to next season. PvP ain't so bad after all. So this is coming from a PvEer, and generally PvEers are very vocal about like wanting PvP literally extradited and surgically removed from the game, and it's why everything is wrong, and they want to blame it. So even a PvEer has come in now on this season and said that it ain't so bad after all. Now obviously it does have its flaws, it's got its problems coming through, and I think in this other post you're going to see one of those flaws, which is the pre-mades in in random battlegrounds and epic random battlegrounds. Now it's hard to prove this, if not close to impossible, which this poster has outlined, and I think this is actually a major issue considering that random battlegrounds and epic random battlegrounds are probably some of the highest participated PvP content in the game. I feel like this should be a high priority to try and snuff out. Now I remember people doing this type of stuff back in the Burning Crusade, doing pre-made Alteric Valleys because you could just instantly win the BGs and farm honor really fast. You could have like 7-minute AVs and just be fully geared so fast. That was the main incentivization. Now you don't really need honor that badly anymore. It's very easy to get a full set of honor gear, so you don't really need to do it for that reason. But even at that time, they just completely dismantled the add-on that allowed players to be able to do this type of queue syncing. So I don't know why that wouldn't be possible to do that now, because I think for the most part, the people that are doing this are just trying to basically set up a Smurf environment where they just fight completely random undergeared people while they're fully coordinated and fully geared. And you can imagine how well that's going to go for the people who just stepped in for the first time. And like we just went over with that last post, the someone's first impression is really important. And I always recommend people, you know, try Battlegrounds first. I think it's a better environment for learning how your class works. You get to see a bunch of different classes all at once. The queue times are generally faster also. I think they're like 5 minutes or lower for the most part. For random Battlegrounds, you might have to use mercenary mode to switch your faction if your queue is longer. But you can get in pretty quick, get a lot of low pressure, you know, instant action, and figure out how your class works and get your damage going. I feel like it's a really good learning environment. And that's obviously not the case if people are queue syncing. And like I said, I don't have evidence for this. I'm not doing them actively enough to tell you personally my experience. Maybe I'll give it a try on my stream, which is linked in the description down below, to see if I can kind of snoop out if this is happening or how prevalent it's happening. It may just be happening at certain times of day, maybe when there's not as many players are on or something like that. This is generally something to be aware of, at least if you're thinking of coming back and trying WoW PvP right now, is that if you're doing some Battlegrounds to get some honor gear, just doing them for fun, you may encounter these pre-mades, and all you can really do is just try not to be frustrated by it, because it's just people either using add-ons or exploiting something in the system in order to set up an unfair advantage so that they can feel dominant in what I would assume is the only place they get to feel dominant because they have miserable lives. I don't really know. But this is the one major thing I think at the moment that Blizzard definitely needs to look into and deal with, along with the other points that I've made throughout this post. But other than that, I think the gameplay is actually really good. I think rating is starting to inflate. There's a lot of viable classes and specializations, and they're making changes and improvements to specializations for the upcoming patch in 11.1, which is going to be coming pretty soon. So to me, I think it's a great time to come back, grind out some of these sets and mounts before they're gone, get prepared for the next season, which is going to be new. And obviously that's when participation explodes, is right at the beginning of a patch or beginning of an expansion. So I just think right now is a really good time to come back into the game if you want my own personal recommendation for it. But other than that, thank you guys very much for watching the video. I hope you guys enjoyed this breakdown, and I will see you in the next one.